You are in control of your bone health. You learn how to take care of them. You're not fragile. You're not breakable. It doesn't just happen with age. It's a lifestyle of making sure that we are as strong as possible, and we can be for as long as we live so that we could do all the things we want to do. It is possible.
I'm Riley Rees. This is the Sofia Unfiltered podcast where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sofia Unfiltered. I'm your host, Riley Rees, and today's conversation is so important for every woman tuning in, especially if you're over 40, heading into perimenopause. We're talking about bone health, but not in the boring drink your milk kind of way. We're diving deep into the real root cause of bone loss and how to build strength, balance, and confidence naturally. And today's guest is an absolute powerhouse. Debi Robinson is a certified yoga therapist and a functional bone health expert who helps women around the world reverse bone loss, rebuild strength, and feel confident in their bodies again. After undergoing a hip replacement at just 51, Debi turned her own healing journey into a mission. And today she's sharing her integrative approach that blends yoga, functional testing, gut health, and real food. Let's get right into it. Debi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's start with your personal story, right? I know it's what drives so much of the passion behind your work. Can you take us back to your hip replacement when you're 51? What was going on in your body and life at that time?
Yeah, that's not normal. It's not normal to have that kind of breakdown at that age. I had an injury then I had a surgery, and that surgery collapsed my hip joint. I tried for 17 months to do all I could. It didn't work. I'd have a total hip replacement. And to make the decision to have a hip replacement, to cut the top of your leg bone off, that's a big, big decision. So I had my hip replacement. And, at the time I was teaching yoga and I was understanding or having to learn about bone health when it's really too early because we usually don't test for bone issues until after 60 or 65. I do have women I'm working with that maybe around 60 are getting tested, but usually 65. That's the recommendation with Medicare to run the gold standard, which is called a DEXA scan, which is an X-ray. It's usually at age 65. So this is actually silent. We're not even aware of what's happening in the background.
Just for our listeners, real quick, bottom line up front, right? What age would you start this testing? We're all about preventative health here.
So our bones build up until about age 30, mid-30s, 35. That's when most bone building and laying down tissue takes place. At that point is when breakdown begins. And it's a slow process. It's not like, "Oh my gosh, I'm losing bone, I'm losing bone." But yes, 30 years later, when you get a DEXA scan, you're gonna see where you arrived. So the process starts to happen around the 30s.
Okay.
I don't know what insurance will cover how early. My gynecologist, ironically, and I just found my DEXA scan recently, um, did this for me at age 50. She did a baseline DEXA scan. Now, the good thing about that is I'm not sure if I was legitimately in menopause. I know my periods were shifting at that point. But the good thing is most bone loss, like, yes, we start to lose in our mid 30s, but where it really accelerates is when you go through menopause and you start to lose estrogen, which I want to say it's about 20%. The first 5 to 7 years post-menopause is when the greatest decrease happens. However, depending on what's happening to your estrogen, in perimenopause could start in our 40s, right? So
That's right.
your hormones are starting to shift and decline, and estrogen and testosterone are hormone protective. So whatever other factors in your life are contributing to that imbalance or loss of hormones is going to translate then to loss of bone.
Really good to know. Really good to know. So you had gone in full hip replacement at 51. Were you already a yoga therapist at the time?
Yes, I was. I was on my way to it. So,
Okay.
I had my first surgery to repair my hip in 2015, and on my second session to my yoga therapy training, I had to go in a wheelchair because I had a surgery and I had to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks. And I was at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, and it's, 3-story building, and the parking lot's down in the basement, I'm all the way in the corner. I had a wheelchair. I had to rent a wheelchair, and I had crutches, and at this time, I was 50 years old. So it was or may no, I was 49 when this was happening, or 50, I can't remember, but yeah, so I started the training and, I just think everything led to this because the fact that I had to start thinking about bones, which is way before most of us do, it's the awareness is just not there.
No, not at
And
all.
so not at all. And I just knew that I wanted to learn more. Like even I asked my surgeon that did my first surgery. I had an arthroscopic, so they go in 3 different places, they have the machine and the camera and whatever else. And I asked him, I said, "What muscles cross the hip joint?" And he's an orthopedic surgeon, okay? He does joint replacement, joint repair, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I'm not sure exactly which ones, but there's a lot." And I just thought, wow. So I felt that if I could see what my hip joint looked like, then I could know what muscles I needed to work on to support the rebuilding of my body. So yes,
And like,
I was,
thanks, I'll go Google it.
and I did.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, that's because, that's how that whole system works, right? There's a real limited scope in the traditional or conventional
Right, right,
medicine
right.
approach. But yeah, it was honestly, I say that my hip joint collapsed and my life completely stopped. It really did at age 50 with little kids, my level of activity, just everything. And that's what set me on this course to learn what I needed to learn about all the factors that are going to affect our bones.
When was it that you started drawing the connection between bone health, gut, stress levels, lifestyle?
Probably so I became a functional health coach before this. I became a yoga teacher as a functional health coach, honestly, because I was going through perimenopause. And when I was 47, 48, feeling terrible, I thought, "Oh my God, I should be burned at the stake." You know how they burned witches at the stake? Like I could see myself being this crazy woman and really irrational. Like I felt that. So
Wow.
I found a program
So
that
you knew your hormones were out of control. Why didn't you just go to your doctor, Debbie?
Yeah, well, what's your doctor gonna do? What is the doctor first of all, okay, so the first initial test for hormones in blood is legitimate. To test hormone levels in serum is good, but to actually monitor then the whole process of are you gonna have some support with BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement? If you're gonna bring in some hormone replacement, then you really need to start looking at the metabolism in your body, and you need to start looking at how does your body function internally with the hormones that you're being given and your body's own hormones. So, it's more of a functional approach. It's the person and what's going on internally, and it's not just, "Here's the pill, here's the hormones." You have to understand, is your body metabolizing those hormones? Can your liver deal with that? Are your receptor sites optimized?
I mean, just hearing all of this, I'm terrified to get to any of this phase. Thank goodness we built Sophia Health and we have all the practitioners, but how in the world is somebody to manage this?
Yeah, that's so confusing, right? You read things, and so here's the thing. You've got traditional healthcare where we have insurance. And that system, because it is a system, it works a certain way. And so that system is gonna look for the what. They're gonna look at what's happening. And those doctors were trained to find the what, and here's the pill for the what. It's just the training. And the medical schools are funded by big pharma and big healthcare to find the what, and here's the pill.
And that's great when you have a situation like broken, cool, here's a surgery. Unfortunately, women just don't work like that.
Well, people don't, right? So there's
Nobody
I
does,
in the acute
right?
3-month or less phase, yes, we need conventional medicine. I have a hip replacement. I got my life back from having that surgery. I'm grateful I had that surgery, and there is a time and the place. Most diseases have an inflammatory component. That's one of my things I'm raising awareness to. Osteoporosis, which is the disease state of bone loss. It's when you get to -2.5 on an X-ray DEXA scan. The disease state of bone loss is called osteoporosis. The phase before you come to it is called osteopenia. The disease state of osteoporosis is managed with pills here in the West. That is how we try to manage that. We find it on a DEXA scan, we manage that with pills. So, but we have to look at the function, right? So traditional conventional medicine look for the what we really need to look for is the why. And that is where lifestyle comes in. So when I had my hip replacement, my next DEXA scan 2 years later, my DEXA scan told me that my bone, my hip, my other hip was negative 2.4. That's 1 point away from osteoporosis, negative 2.4. I was like, oh my goodness. So what did I do? Well, I'm like, how can I internally support that? So I ran functional labs, I changed my diet, my lifestyle. I understood all of the components that we had to work on. And I was teaching about 8 classes at the time. So everything I demonstrated for my students in class was done on my natural hip side because I didn't need to make my titanium ceramic hip stronger. It's not going to break. I needed to work on my natural hip. So I spent 2 years doing that, and my next DEXA scan, same facility, same technician, so there was more potential for it to be legitimate. But my next one was negative 1.9, which means that was a huge, significant shift in my bones. And so that's an N of 1, which means that's Debbie Robinson.
That's right.
But I also see it in so many women that I'm working with, and so I know it's possible that when we realize that osteoporosis is an inflammatory disease, and that has not been talked about, not been known. We thought it was a progressive, degenerative, as you get older disease. No, it's an inflammatory disease, and it's exacerbated by internal toxicity and mineral imbalance, hormone imbalance, stress, and inflammation. And so when we understand that, that is the why, and you start to get all the whys, and there's not just one why, there's a lot of whys. So what are the whys? And that's what our lifestyle can work on, or stopping the whys.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Debbie. I love that how you turned something so challenging into basically a message of hope and action for a lot of people, specifically women, right? I know we talked a lot about it already. We talked about what's happening hormonally, but what are some of the early signs and symptoms women might miss?
So I wanna also say that I wanna raise awareness to that perimenopause crowd about taking care of your bones without fear. Bone remodeling is a slow process, and that's a good thing, right? We don't wanna lose too much too quickly because it's a lot easier to keep what you have than it is to rebuild. So raising awareness to the fact that what are the root causes of bone loss? What are the things we need to focus on? So inflammation is a major root cause. It's an inflammatory metabolic disease. So, how do we manage inflammation? Well, this is one of the biggest areas that we can control inflammation or raise our awareness to it is the gut. And so when you have to make sure that you're eating foods that are gonna build tissues, bones being one of those tissues. So making sure you optimize your diet, that's gonna be removing inflammatory triggering foods, eating fiber because that's gonna feed the beneficial microbes in your gut that actually maintain your fortress. That's what we're working on. So when you can manage inflammation, so eating the foods that are gonna build tissue and not break it down, managing stress, that's a big one because the stomach is actually and the whole gut system is innervated with your nervous system. So you're either telling your nervous system, yes, you can eat and digest, or no, we got to get the heck out of here. So realizing that when you're in a stressful state, don't eat when you're watching crazy news stories. Don't have horrible conversations when you're eating. Let your body know that this beautiful food I'm bringing in is to build hormones, to build bones, to build muscles, and then you need to, of course, optimize sleep. That's when most of the bone remodeling takes place. And all of these things that I'm sharing are also ways to protect your hormones so that you are the most vibrant, happy version of yourself, right? So the lifestyle to support bone health is a lifestyle to support hormone health. You have to do movement. Movement is really, really up there. We need stronger muscles because stronger muscles will lead to stronger bones.
These are really great preventative, but is there anything else that women going into the perimenopause phase, is there anything else they should be looking out for? I mean, yes, and obviously good lifestyle changes improve your health, but is there anything that we can be looking for? Any signs, anything that we can be doing? I guess anything that we should be looking for or doing before we hit that 60, 65 for a DEXA scan?
Okay, so the way that we used to diagnose osteoporosis before we had the DEXA scan in the 90s was if someone fell and fractured, they said, "She has osteoporosis." So it was usually falling and having a fracture. So I would say that one of the things and what I'm hearing from a lot of women I'm working with is that their orthopedic surgeons are telling them, "Go get the DEXA scan," if they're before the age of 65, and that maybe is because they fell and had a fracture. Now, if you do fall and have a fracture, you have to ask yourself, would a 20-year-old have fractured? So it doesn't mean because you had a fracture that you have weak bones. It's what was the trauma and what was the energy of that trauma. So that is something to take into account. So, really, one of the big things is if you are having orthopedic surgery, if you've fractured something. Now, when it comes to spinal health, and half of all the fractures are in spine, let's talk about that. I know that's an important thing for you.
Right.
Half of all the fractures in osteoporosis are in the spine. So, what we have to focus on in your 40s is posture and spinal alignment. Now, let's think of your torso as like a 3-scoop ice cream. You have a pelvis, which is scoop 1, a rib cage, scoop 2, and a head is scoop 3. If our 3rd scoop, which is our head, is forward all the time, texting, computers, cooking, whatever it is we're doing, when our 3rd scoop is forward, that's gonna put extra pressure on the front of the spine, and those compression fractures and osteoporosis happen in the front of your spine, right below your heart, in between your heart and your belly button. That's where the fractures happen in the front. So if you could raise awareness to the importance of posture in your 40s, and having your scoops aligned, your pelvis, your rib cage, and your head. And so strengthening the back muscles, doing anything that's gonna strengthen your back muscles to keep you in that position. When you bend, learn how to bend in your hip joint, not in your spine. So no bending forward of your spine, but instead, when you bend down to get something, spread your legs, toes are slightly turned out, bend in your hip joint. So one of the things I like to say is imagine you have a raw egg right at your hip joint. And as you bend, your belly comes towards your top thigh and cracks that egg. So bending properly in your hip, not in your spine, sitting up straight, standing up straight, totally bringing that awareness into your life, stacking those 3 scoops. Where is your 3rd scoop? Always paying attention to that and bringing it back to where it needs to go. And the thing about bones, bones are present, moment, and judgmental. That one of the orthopedic surgeons that I'm working with, doing programming with, this is a concept that he's taught me. They are present moment and judgmental. What do they need right now? So if you develop stronger muscles, that signals to your bones, I need you to be strong. So work on developing strength in your muscles.
That's really great. I'm all fired up and feel like this is doable and approachable. And this is what you're something that you're known for, right? So you're a certified yoga therapist and you use yoga not just for stress relief, but also real effective tool for bone building. How does how does this work? Can you break down why yoga works?
What we're understanding, I believe now, is that we don't have to work so hard. So it's not about pushing through, it is about stronger muscles. So for me, yoga is the premier tool that we need when it comes to movement because and I think maybe here in the West, we think of yoga as this with what people say to me when I tell them I'm a yoga therapist, I have classes, come and practice with me, they say, "Oh, I'm not flexible." And what I need to say to them is, well, yoga doesn't require physical flexibility, it requires mental flexibility. Yoga works a lot of the joint muscles, a lot of the stabilizing smaller muscles, not the big ones we're trying to do. And it does the big ones, right? But the biceps, triceps, quads, glutes, hamstrings, yes, those get worked. But in yoga, because they're actually postures, we call them poses, but you're not trying to come into a pose and strike a pose. You're actually finding a postural alignment of your joints when you're in a posture, constantly refining it, arms are out to the side, push your shoulders away from your ears, slide your shoulder blades towards each other, lift your heart, lengthen your spine. Where's that 3rd scoop? Push it back in alignment. When you approach the practice like that and you find that alignment, you are so present moment, managing mental, emotional energy. You've got the strength component, building the stronger muscles. You've got the stress management, present moment. Here I am. "Oh my gosh, how much longer is she gonna keep me here? My quads are burning," so you're so present moment. And then you have this amazing strength that comes into your feet, the strength that comes into your ankles. You have this coordination that's happening in your joints. So there's a communication through your body from the feet all the way up to the brain. So to me, yoga is like the premier practice that will keep us healthy, mobile, and happy as we age, regardless of whether we start that at 40 or we're starting that at 70 or whenever we are.
That is so inspiring, and it's so funny. I literally mute my mic so you can't hear my knees popping. They're so bad. So, yeah, I was a runner. So, that transition to yoga's my whole health, my bone health would probably thank you.
Yeah, so then what I wanna say is here that when you practice yoga for bone health, you don't wanna do the flowing practices. So, the physical so I've gone to India 3 times. I study with my teachers there, and I just love this practice and this wisdom from the East. I think it is so profound. I think that it is the answer for healing for humans, is the wisdom that comes out of the science of Ayurveda, which is for the body, the way we eat and how we eat and supporting digestion, and then yoga, the physical practice, which is actually mostly for the mind. So the goal of yoga is liberation from suffering as a human being. That's really what the goal is. I mean, from a yoga perspective, everything happens in the mind because you're the person showing up to choose the foods, to choose if you're going to move, to choose if you're going to manage your stress, to choose how you show up in this life. But if we're going to look at, the conventional and what do we have a lot of control over, it is our gut health and how we manage our gut health when it comes to supporting our bones.
So, I love that you're blending the physical and emotional, right? So much of the confidence too is connected to the balance and mobility. And that brings us to gut health, right? You are talking gut health in a bone health episode. Most of the time, we're talking, most people would assume we're going to be saying drink milk, take your calcium, get your vitamin D, but you start in the gut, and this is incredible. So, what are the key nutrients? Where do we even start in this gut health conversation?
Well, those 3 things you said, drink milk, vitamin D, and take calcium, we use about 70% of our antibiotics in the US on our cows. So the meat you're eating, the milk you're drinking is going to have whatever they were exposed to, which is why we have to consider the source. But the big thing too, I run functional labs and I run food sensitivity labs. And one of the Zoomers that I run is on dairy. And I run labs on women with osteoporosis and osteopenia. And I'm gonna say 85 to 90% of those have a high reactivity to dairy. So dairy is inflammatory. I say to limit it. Really good when you to do an anti-inflammatory 90-day diet just to then when you bring foods back in, you'll notice reactivity. And so that's one thing, or 80-20 rule. uh, goat and uh, goat and sheep milk are going to be smaller molecules and less reactivity. So maybe some sheep milk cheese or goat milk cheese. Dr. Mark Hyman, one of the biggest players in the functional medicine space, had a article called Got Proof, and he actually showed that there were so many flaws in we need dairy. Calcium, it's not that we need more calcium. 99% of our calcium is stored in our bones. We need to keep the calcium in our bones. And so if you take calcium supplements and your body, you have root causes of bone loss that you haven't identified and eradicated, then you're going to get this calcium to come in and it's going to sit on the heart or in the soft tissues, the arteries. So taking calcium supplements if your body is not utilizing calcium properly is actually dangerous. And the studies are showing there's more heart attacks in the studies of women taking calcium or high calcium supplements.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Are there quick foods, go to habits to support gut and bone health that you have for our listeners?
I would say to shoot for about 70 plus protein grams. I know there's a lot out there on protein. In my podcast, I interview functional physicians, and one, she's a detective. She really helps people with root cause analysis. She said her hardest people to work with are the carnivores and the vegans, like the extreme polar opposites. A really high animal consumption diet, animal protein consumption diet could be acidic, and acidity is a root cause of bone loss. When your body is too acidic, your bones dissolve alkalizing minerals that they store. So the whole protein thing I know is a big controversy. And I'm gonna say we don't really know, okay? So that to me is where we have to actually ask ourselves, do we really know? What are the studies? Because when I first started this and I wanted to say don't drink caffeine, I was looking for studies to say don't drink caffeine. And I found so many studies. It's dehydrating and it's acidic. And I found so many studies that said coffee's great. It's an antioxidant. Da 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 da. Well, I pushed them to the side because that wasn't what I wanted to share. I wanted to share don't do it. It's the same thing with protein. And so about 70, 75 plus grams of protein a day is a good base number. So shooting for that. If you're eating 4 eggs in the morning or 3 eggs, that's close to 20 grams right there. If you do eat animal protein and you have the palm-sized chicken breast or fish, that's about 25 in each one. You're getting close there, and then throw in some nuts. And by the way, vegetables have protein. So we can get protein building muscles in the plant world too. So 70 plus grams of protein. And then for gut health, probably the biggest needle mover to support your beneficial gut microbes, the gatekeepers, the protectors, even the bone building bacteria, because there is bone building bacteria in our gut that supports bone building. 30 plus grams of fiber a day. So try to get 30 plus grams. And then, avoid the foods you avoid. Bring in foods that are high in the main. There's 4 musketeers of bone health. You've got calcium, which we need. Vitamin D helps calcium get absorbed into the body. Magnesium puts calcium into solution, and vitamin K2, delivers it to the bones. So those are the 4 musketeers, and then manganese, boron, phosphorus, vitamin C, the Bs, because that's gonna help with stress. Those are all important as well. So really looking at labels, and if you're looking at your labels, look for protein, look for fiber. You wanna keep sugars below 10 grams, and then in the lower part, potassium is another one to look for.
Yeah, that is so awesome for our listeners. I'll make sure we get this spelled out in our show notes as well. It's interesting you mentioned that on the sugars. I know I was just looking for my son for making sure we're not getting any added sugars for him. He's still at that age, but the yogurts and milks have such high sugar contents
Oh, they do, yeah.
just naturally. So
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, Riley, honestly, when you start to raise awareness, you actually see where you can go. You see your path. And so learning this awareness, I don't want to scare my perimenopause crowd. I just want to raise awareness. And what you do for your bones, because they're at the center of your body, is going to benefit all the other things we
yeah,
want,
you
like
mentioned hormones, everything.
keeping our skin young and not saggy and all of that. So yeah, there's so much we can do, and that's my whole thing, is just to raise awareness that it's a lifestyle.
Yeah,
It's a lifestyle.
absolutely. It's a lifestyle and choices. Now, you mentioned functional testing a few times. You were using functional testing with your clients. What specifically are you testing for? How does this change the game for women?
Yeah, and you kind of brought this up too, that, if we use healthcare and we go to our traditional doctor, that they're looking for the what, they have 10 minutes with you, their recommendation is gonna be a pill. It just is what it is. But when you wanna start going deeper and looking at root causes and how can you really optimize your body to be the best bone builder, muscle builder, hormone builder possible, then that's where functional labs come in. And I've come to some favorite functional labs. I love to run a stool test because I could get so much information about your digestion, your mucosal barrier. Do you have enough good gut microbes? Do you have opportunistic overgrowth? Do you have yeast? Do you have parasites? Do you have an inflammatory trigger? There's one gluten marker in there. So is your body reacting to gluten? And we could just get so much great information. So I love running stool tests. There's also a hair mineral test where you take hair from near the scalp, and this shows the soft tissue capture of your minerals over about a 3-month time frame, which can then identify support when it comes to supplementation, which is really great. We could do a little bit more of a customization. And there's some other labs. I mean, in the perimenopause world, I'd say the Dutch, which is a urine and saliva. That's going to give you a cortisol awakening response to show how your adrenals are functioning. That's going to give you all your steroid sex hormones. You're going to get the precursor DHEA. You're going to get testosterone, progesterone, estrogen. You're going to get your estrogens. You're going to learn as your body metabolizing down the safe pathways. So we need to make sure that the function of our body, it's worth spending the money, getting these labs run, getting a custom, first of all, look into your body's function, but then also getting a custom protocol for you to optimize your health.
We do it for our cars at a certain mileage, right? So this is incredible. Um, Going back to the stool hair and the hormone testing, is this something where people should can we do this on our own?
For someone to go run a lab and think that they're going to look at this and know what any of it means is really hard. And then to create the protocol, like, what probiotic do you need? Well, when you have a stool lab, you're gonna know, and there's certain markers that if this thing, and this thing, then this is the best probiotic species for you. So there are, if you ran a lab and you found out you had inflammatory dysbiosis, like, can you self-treat? I feel like I'm gonna say no. Now, could I generally, like, I have a community and I put out general protocol recommendations for healing leaky gut or for supporting bone health. So there are certain things that I find that the majority of the women I work with, I use this on mostly everybody or this, but there is this customization place. I don't know. It would be great if there are some home tests, and I know in your platform, you do have some women's health tests. So it might be that there are some tests that you could actually start to monitor your hormones and figure out where you are, and then if there's a sheet that recommends foods that support, foods that are gonna get in the way of, then I'm sure that, yes, that could be a real good, path to get on initially.
Yeah, and I just wanna say that with a caveat too, some of the tests that we have from some companies, like the KBMO team and the food sensitivity testing, that is very much you have to have a practitioner to handle the protocols afterwards. It has to be read by a practitioner, so it just depends, but I just know there's so much on the market now when it comes to testing, for women who are younger, who are like, "Hey, just every few years, I'm gonna get a test to monitor myself before we get to any of these points of failures," I think is now really empowering for people, especially women, to be able to take control of their health and get a solid baseline before things start changing.
Yeah, that's what it is. Get a baseline, raise your awareness, don't be scared, just realize what are the biggest needle movers for you in your health. Learn what are the things that dissolve bones. So my terminology is we're either building bones or dissolving our bones.
Yeah.
And when you start to raise your awareness to what's building and what's dissolving. So dissolving are the foods like sugar, dairy, and gluten at the top of the funnel. Alcohol's not great for bones. Coffee's not great for bones. Or actually, caffeine is not great for bones because it's dehydrating and acidic. So those are going to be the dissolvers. Stress is going to be dissolving. A weak body with not enough muscle tone is dissolving. Not getting optimal sleep, dissolving. And mineral deficiencies, not having the right nutrients and a healthy gut to absorb those minerals, dissolving. So what builds? Good sleep, stress management, keep your muscles strong, make sure you're supporting your gut health, eating in peace, eating the right foods. And when we do it that way, and it's an everyday thing, it really does make it easier. When you open the refrigerator and you're tempted to eat that thing there, you're like, I don't want to dissolve my bones or my hormones. I want to build them.
Making smart choices every day, it's a lifestyle. Debbie, everything that you shared today has just been so empowering. And I think that's also inspiring hope as well. You've really given us a new lens to see our whole health, not just our bone health and our strength. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final takeaway. If you could share, if you want to give every woman over 41 piece of advice when it comes to her bones, what would it be?
You are in control of your bone health. You learn how to take care of them. You're not fragile, you're not breakable. It doesn't just happen with age. It's a lifestyle of making sure that we are as strong as possible, and we can be for as long as we live so that we could do all the things we wanna do. It is possible.
That's really empowering and inspiring. A question that we ask all the guests on the show, if you could please share three fundamental pillars that contribute to your well being.
So every day I check myself before I wreck myself. So when things are happening, I just come to the present moment. So I really do try to manage, depending on how manageable things are. That I try to do on an every single day. I move my body all day, every day. I don't actually go to a gym, and I teach 5 live classes a week. So that's my live class. I do heel raises all the time. I do squats all the time. I come into a postural position to support my back muscles all the time. So the stress I really focus on, there's 3 main areas that are going to contribute to breakdown in our mind, body, and soul. That's the mental emotional, so that's check yourself before you wreck yourself. There's the movement, moving so you stay strong. And then with diet, which, that's hard because I love crusty sourdough bread slathered with butter. I love that. I love a hunk of good mature cheddar cheese. Like, I love that stuff. And I need to make sure I feed my gut microbes and I need to bring in that nutrition. So, those are the 3 areas that throughout the day I'm always trying to stay on course.
That's great. I love that. But Debbie, thank you again so much for sharing your story, your brilliance, and for everyone listening. We'll see you next time on Sofia Unfiltered.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sofia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Rees. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.